All right, let's get started. Share my first screen. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. All right, so today we'll get started with week 2, day 1. Today we'll go deep into JavaScript. We started JavaScript with few things. We started with variables, data types. We started with conditional if-else statements. We started with loops, for loop, while loop. So those you practiced a little bit, you've seen them, but you will see them more as we go through the JavaScript. So today we start an intro to JavaScript week. We will be learning functions, arrays, and objects. These are very, very important in JavaScript. They are the fundamentals of this programming language and a lot of programming languages. So these are some of the objectives that we will cover. At the end of this module, you should understand JavaScript functions, why we use them, be able to write a correct function syntax. You should be able to write and call functions using arguments and parameters and return statement. You should be able to use arrays to store and access data. You should be able to use arrays, array properties, and array methods. You should be able to use objects to store data and access data. And then lastly, you should learn. You should be able to. You will learn to create methods on objects and utilize this keyword. All right, so let's get started with the first one. Functions. Functions are fundamental to JavaScript and other programming languages. Function come from the concept of dry. We did mention a little bit in when we were talking about the loop. So functions are another way to keep your code dry. And dry stands for don't repeat yourself. So functions, what they do is they take a task and they repeat that task as many times as you want. Think of it as here they gave it like example of cooking something. Think of a cooking. When you go to the kitchen, you want to cook something. Let's say you want to cook pasta and chicken. Um, so if you have a recipe for the pasta and chicken, you want to do that as a Somalis, we do it every almost every other day. So you want to do that correctly every other day. Let's say, if you want to do that, then you create a function for that. So you say you will create a function that's called here it says bake cookies, but you will create a function that's called something like cook pasta, something like that. And these parentheses indicate a function. So if you see anything after, if you see anything in parentheses, with parentheses, that means it's a function. So you create something like like cook pasta. So every time you run that function, it cooks the pasta for you. But within the function, you could give other functions or you could give instructions. So you could say something like add, here it says add flour. You could say add pasta, add chicken, add sauce, add other things. So you could give instructions within the function, and then you close that function, and then you just call it. And then you could also have a function that makes pasta and rice, and then you could just give it one either pasta or rice, and then it runs that process every day for you. So I think Somalis will benefit from that, a function that creates pasta or rice every time perfectly. So that's what functions do. Basically, they repeat the same concept, the same thing again and again. A lot of times when you think about function, think of input and output. If you go to a vending machine, let's say most of you have vending machine at your house, I mean at your apartments, to this at the store. So when you go to vending machine, you put your money in the vending machine, you press two numbers or something like that, and then it gives you a soda. Uh, so the vending machine is actually using a function. So the core of the program of vending machine is using a function. So it's basically it has an input place and it has output place, and we will learn what those are. They're called parameters and arguments. So you give it input and then it will give you output. So functions run the same thing again and again. So that's mainly the concept. So let's look at the syntax of functions. we will be using CodeBen actually to run our JavaScript. So I can share with you guys if you want. But at the end of it, I'll share the code I write here. So let's write function here. I mean, why did I do that? Okay, I meant this functions. So I'm writing a comment now. Functions repeat same task multiple times. Okay. And then also another thing would be functions most of the time have input and output. Okay, so those are the main things to understand about functions. So let's try a new function. So if you want to write a function, just like we learned variables, we learned other things. First, you have to declare something that you call the function. So we use the function keyword. So if you write the function, then your browser and every engine that you're using will understand like you're writing a function. So now, and also you're in JavaScript, so this is a JavaScript function. And then you will give the function a name. So let's say we say something like say hello. Say hello. And we have these parentheses. So every time you create a function name, you have to give the parentheses. Most of the time, sometimes it's empty, but a lot of times it has something in here, which we will learn in a little bit. So you will give the function a name. As you can see, I use the camel case thing I talked about last time. So if camel case is basically every time you you want to name something in JavaScript, the first word is lowercase, the second word, the first letter of the second word is uppercase, and then you will open the function. So everything in this curly bracket is going to run when we call this function. So let's say something like console log hello world. All right. So how do we? So let's see if this. Let's clear here actually. Let's see if this actually does anything. So let's save it and run. So we should wait here. Nothing happens here. That means we didn't call this function. So if you want to call a function, you just call it by its name. You just say hello, and then you give it that. If you leave that, then that means you're not invoking. So this is called invoking a function. So this is called invoking function, but it's not invoking unless you add those two parentheses. So if you don't add those two parentheses, the function is not called yet. So these two parentheses will activate the function, and they will call function. You could call without doing that, but it's going to show just the function, how it's written. It's just going to show here. So you have to console log that and call that. But we can call it like this and run. So it should give us hello world right there. So it ran this function and then it returned whatever is in the function. So this is a normal function. This is how you run a function. So that's a basic function. That's how the syntax of function is written. All right, let's try something else. So let's add a little bit of complexity to the function. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and create something called function. We're gonna call something called function declaration. Declaration. I think let's go decal. Okay, let's see. Yeah, declaration. So function declaration is when you call the function, but you add you add a argument and you add we'll see. So let's go here function, and then we give it a name, something like add, and we give it num1 and num2. So what these are so let's go here. So it's in right here. So function declaration is right here. So we have, so if we go here, we have, let's see, we have the parentheses. So I mean parameters. So these are called parameters. So if you add something to the function, like if you add something here, these are called parameters. Parameters, you can name them whatever you want here. You can name Now you could name number or something like that, whatever. But name something that makes sense that you're trying to target. So now we're trying to add two numbers. So these are called parameters, but the order matters. So if you put this one first, and you call the function, it could mess up, and I'll show you that what that looks like. All right, let's see. So we will use something called the return. So every time you do something in the function. So this one we didn't do anything in the function. We just said console log hello world. It didn't do any work. It just returned what's in the function. But when you're trying to do something in the function, let's say you're trying to add two numbers, you have to use the return keyword. So this return, you cannot change it. That's how the function works. So if you want to return something from a function, you say that, and then we say num1 plus num2. Let's see. Okay, num1 plus num2. So it's basic. So we add in two numbers here. So let's call this function now. Let's say add, and then we give that, and then we say we give two numbers. So right now here is the argument. So this is called let me just, how do I so this is called parameters. So these are the parameters of the function. Parameters, I think that's how you spell parameters. This is right now we're going to call a number. We're going to say 3 and 4. These are called arguments. So let's comment it out and say something like arguments. So these are arguments. So now you're basically saying call this function and then make the num this number, and make the num1 and num2 make it this number. It's gonna mess up if you call something else, if you just say something like 5, because the function doesn't know what are you trying to call, because it doesn't have that parameter. So now if we run this, let's comment that out so it doesn't run again. And we run it, it should give us the correct answer. So now we're just gonna wait for a second for it to run. Oh, actually, okay. So here's the thing about the return. So if you do return, you have to console log it. So you have to do console log. Now it's trying to, it's not returning just like a string or number that you already declared. It's trying to do an argument. It's trying to like calculate something. So now you have to console log it. So let's run it. It should give us the correct answer in here. So 7. So you could put any number you want here. You could put like 50 plus 888. It will give us the correct answer here too. So that's how you write a parameter. That's how you write argument. And this is mostly how functions work. Is you put something in here as a parameter, you do something with the parameters, and then you run them. Make sure that the parameters are not hard coded. So don't create something like 5. If you do that, then there's no way to change the 5 when you're trying to run the program. So make sure most of the time, your function is clean. So unclean functions are usually functions with no hard-coded values inside them, unless you want that. So unless you want to calculate something and then multiply by a number, then you could do that. But that number cannot be changed later, especially if you're writing a big program, a big software. So that's function. So let's move on. Let's write something called function expressions. So function expressions. So there's different ways of writing a function. So this is one way that we wrote. So declaring the function and then declaring the name of the function and then either calling it normally or doing something with it and then returning it. So that's one way. The other way is something called function expression, is by declaring a variable. So we'll declare something like subtract, subtract, okay, subtract, and just like that, it's as you can see, this is just a normal variable. And something to keep in mind is that functions are basically an object in JavaScript. So and we will learn what objects are. So you could pass them, you could put them in a variable if you want. So you could put anything in JavaScript in a variable, and then you could return it, and you could put it anywhere. So functions are like that. They basically, you could pass them around, you could put them in different places. So now we're going to say function, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say num1, num2. And who can tell me now the difference between this one we did and this one, other than the variable that we created? Who can tell me the difference so far? The difference, who knows? Who can see the difference so far?
Oh, you didn't name the name to put it in the pack.
Yes. So the name in this function is also called sometimes anonymous. So I don't know if I can spell that, anonymous. Anonymous function. So the reason why we say anonymous function is because the function doesn't have a name other than the variable. So we moved the name of the function, and we made it a variable, and then we put that variable, we put this function in the variable. So now we just do the same thing we did. We're gonna return the normal numbers. So we say num1 minus num2. All right. So now we could declare it. So something to keep in mind is that if you we could do the same thing, but also you could take this and put it in other places and add it to another function and run it that way. So when you're declaring a function expression, you're basically trying to put this function somewhere so it can run, so mostly in another function. So, and we will learn that other times. So we'll say console log, you should give us the correct answer. So we'll say subtract, and then we'll give it a parenthesis. We'll give it the arguments. So now the arguments, let's say something like 4 and 2. So 4 and 2. So now you should give us a correct answer, run, and you should say 2. So 4 and 2. So that's function expression, or anonymous function, if you ever heard. So that's another way of calling function or creating a function. There's another way of creating a function, which is the last one that we will talk about, which is called arrow function. So arrow function, and you will see why it's called arrow function. Sometimes it's called fat arrow, but most people don't call it fat arrow. They just call it arrow function. The reason why this one is the latest one. So arrow functions, and we will see how they are written. They were added in ES6, which is who can tell me what's ES6? We kind of covered it last time. Who remember?
Pretty much the latest version of JavaScript.
Latest version of JavaScript. Okay, good. So yeah, so ES6 is the latest version of JavaScript. I will not quiz you guys the year, but ES6 came 2015. So arrow functions were added in ES6. So arrow function ES6 update. So this was a new update, a new way of kind of declaring a function. And mostly you will see this in when we go to the advanced, like React and other places. You will see this used all the time, and it will be used in like callback function, which is a little more advanced, and we will learn that. But it's basically when you're trying to pass a function within another function, you usually use arrow functions. So let's declare arrow functions. So first, to start with, they're similar to anonymous functions. So you will declare a variable. So let's say something like multiply, since we're doing a lot of math, multiply. And instead of declaring function, you will skip all that and just no function. You will not write function anywhere. Num1, num2, and then you will declare an arrow here, and that's it. So as you can see, we got rid of the function, and then we replaced it with this arrow. So we moved this function right here, and we convert it to an arrow. So that's why it's called arrow function, or sometimes fat arrow. So now you could just do the same thing and return the item. And also, you don't even have to say return. So you could get rid of the return too. But there's also easier way. So if you want to make it one line, you don't even have to have this brackets and these curly brackets, you don't even have to have it. You could just say num1 times num2. So as you can see, they kind of like made it very small, trying to get rid of everything. It might be confusing at the beginning if you're used to the normal function, which is okay. But basically, you declare a variable, and then instead of having function, you say, okay, move that function to here and convert it to arrow. And then after that, you could either do the same thing as this right here, or you could just make it simple so that it's one line. And now if we do the same thing and just call it, let's say console log, call the function multiply and give it two numbers, something like that, it should give us a number here. So let's run it. As you can see, 21. So 3 times 7. So this is actual function. So it might look really weird, but it is an actual function. And this is mostly how it's run. Sometimes you will see it has a bracket, curly brackets here, which is normal, and it will run the normal way. So now if we do that, I think we have to give it a return, but let's try. Let's run it. Oh, it's undefined. Yeah, we have to give it a return here. So if you put the curly brackets, then you have to give it a return. So that means it's expecting something. So that's how you run, either that way or this way. So you will see this a lot. You see this a lot. Any questions about functions, guys? Any questions about functions? Anything you're confused about? Let me know. Okay. All right. So that's generally it for functions. Let me just cover one more thing or two more things. So we didn't cover something called hoisting, and I'll cover it in a second. Let me see if we missed anything here. So we talked about arrow function. All right. Let's talk about hoisting. What is hoisting? So here, let's read this description. It's better than my wording. So JavaScript utilizes a two-pass compiler when executing lines of code that we write. So what does that mean is it's basically saying JavaScript, when it's running, it kind of checks everything two times. So if you send it a code, it checks that code two times. So it checks the first time, it kind of like does its own figuring out like what is what, and then the second time it's kind of like the executing. This means that anytime we run JavaScript in a browser, the browser will take two passes over our code. So every time you run a JavaScript in a browser, it checks two times. It doesn't check only one time. The first pass builds up references to all our code. So the first time it runs and the code goes over, the compiler or the browser checks the code. It takes all the references. It says, okay, is this a function? Is this a variable? And it puts all that in its memory, declaring variables, functions, the likes. The second pass applies values to the references that were found. That's actually running the code. So the second pass is when it does like the calculation, it does the declaration, things like that. Okay, so function declarations are defined on the first pass. So function declarations, so it checks functions, if there's any functions on the first try in the browser, and then the second try it calculates or it runs that function. So what is hoisting then? So hoisting in general is if you want to put something at the top. So let's say like when you're trying to ride a horse, you hoist yourself at the top of the horse or something. That's I think that's kind of like the description. Let's just do Google definition of what hoisting is. Raise something by means of ropes and pulleys. So basically, if you want to raise something to higher. So in the function, it means that let me actually just do it in our place. So so let's do it here. Function hoisting. I think that's how do you spell hoisting? Oh, okay, hoisting. So now let's say something like console log. Let's say divide. Let's divide two numbers. 4, 4, and 2. Okay. So now we didn't even write the function yet. Now we can write the function. We can write the function that divides. Divide, and we say num1, num2, and then just do the usual stuff. Return num1 divided by num2. So now if we run our program, it will show the normal stuff. So it will just divide these two numbers and give us the answer. The reason for that is there's something called hoisting. So first it checks this. So first thing it does, it checks the whole program. It just goes from the top to the bottom, and it says, okay, let me understand what is this. So that's what the engine does. It checks everything. And now it knows that there is actually a function called divide. So it will not give you like, now if we declare this, it will give us a, without the function, it will give us undefined because we don't even have the function. So it will give us an error. So it will say reference divide is not defined, which is correct. But now we defined it, but we put it underneath. So it should like pass this, check this, and then come back and does its calculation. So let's run that again. So it should give us like 1. 2, I mean, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 2. So it basically did its job. So that's hoisting in general. So if you declare something at the top and then kind of like use as a function or other calculation, JavaScript already knows. So it's a big concept in JavaScript, which is called hoisting. Other programming languages don't have it. I think most of them don't have it. So it's unique to JavaScript hoisting. So that's another thing that I want to say about functions. So other than that, in general, that's what functions are. Basically, they run a code. They could do calculations. You could put something in the function and kind of like have instructions as how to do it, and it runs after that. So any questions about functions? Any questions you guys have about functions before we move on? All right. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to arrays. So these are arrays. Okay, let's create a new new bin for arrays. All right. Arrays. Okay. Now, so what are arrays? Let's learn that. Let me check something. The behavior, auto save but not auto run, which is good. All right. Everything else is good. So let's read what arrays are. So arrays allow us to group or store data together. Usually this data is related, but that's not required. Arrays give us ability to pass collections of data around as a single variable. So you remember how we had normal variable. So let's actually put here arrays. So arrays collection of data, related or unrelated. All right, so that's arrays. Let me get my notes. Also, something about functions is that okay, things inside the arrays. Okay, so now that's generally arrays. I don't want to add too much. Remember how we had a constant name equal to something like Duran, let's say. So we had this. This is a normal variable. So this variable can only hold one thing. If you want to declare something else, you have to say constant age equal 30, let's say. So you have to declare that. Now these are not even connected. So if you want to put things together, you could use variable. So variable connects everything, and it has you could use it as a collection of items. So you declare exactly the same way as the variable. So we say fruit, let's say, that's the one I have. So let's add some fruits here. So if you want to add something in array, so array, this is how you know something is array, is by square brackets. So these are called the square brackets. So they show that this is an array. So if you're in JavaScript, if you ever see this is arrays. And in other languages similar to. So arrays are also called other languages different names. Like Python, they're called list, which we will learn at the end. But this is how you declare them. And so now let's add something in this array. So we're doing fruits, so let's do mango. And if you want to add something in the array, strings are usually normal, so you give them a that. But if you want to add number, you just declare the normal number. Even you could also add other data types like true here, or you could add what are other data types? Number, minus, all that stuff. So let's add more fruits here. Apple. Let's add the one we like, banana. Let's add something like kiwi. We don't even know what that is, but let's go for it. Grapes. Okay. So these are some fruits that we have. So that's how you declare an array. So if I say variable, because I'm used to it, I'm talking about array. So how do you call, how do you pick one of them and we can console log it? Can anybody tell me how do we pick one of them and console log here?
I think you call it by number, by using the number.
By number. Okay, so that's good. So by number. So number is actually yeah, it's called index. So this is the index. So arrays, the unique thing about arrays is that they have something called index. And what is index? Index is a number that's automatically assigned to every item in the array by the browser automatically. So an index start with, what do indexes start with? 1 or 2 or something like that? Who do they start with?
0.
0.
0.
So index start with 0. You have to keep that in mind always. So if you see array, index always start with a 0. So this is a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's kind of like a joke in the programming world where they say something like, if I think there's some joke about it where if somebody says arrays start with a 1, then that person gets disowned or something like that. So arrays start with 0 index. So now if we're gonna want to call something one of the arrays, we call the name of the array fruits, and then we give it, how do we call it, guys? How do we give it the index? What do you guys think? So should we call it like this, like that?
Square. Square. Parentheses. The other.
Or square brackets. Okay.
Yeah,
All right, square brackets, and then we give it a number like 1. What do you think? Which one will render?
Apple.
Apple. Okay. So if we run right there, apple. So 1 is apple, and then 0 is mango, just like that. And then just like that, you just keep going. 3 is 0, 1, 2, 3. We should have a kiwi somewhere here. So that's how you call array, and that's how you access it basically. So how do we, okay, this is another one. How do we get the, how do we know how long an array is? How long an array? So how do we know how long the array is? So let's say we have millions of items in this array. How do we figure out what method do we use?
I think you call it
Okay,
length.
we call it first the fruits itself. Okay.
And then dot length.
Okay, dot length. So this is a method that is already created by JavaScript, and it's in the browser. So when you call it dot length and you have to write it like that, it will give you a number of how many items are in the array. So if we clear now and run it, the last thing should be a number of these items. So 5. So as you can see, 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a length. So that's something to keep in mind. And also you could use this in variable, and it will give you how many characters are in the variable. So that's also something you could use. Let's see. Let's call Okay. Find the last item in array. How do we do that? How do you get the last item in array? Fruits, okay. So the last item, we could just get it. We could say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could just say 4 here. But imagine this is hundreds and thousands of items, and you don't even know which one's the last. Or let's say nobody gave you the amount of, nobody gave you the different items of in the array. Sometimes you're working with the databases, you're working with a team, and they just tell you, okay, here's the variable. I mean, here's the array. Find the last one. How you don't even know, you haven't seen the array. Okay, so good. So somebody typed -1. Okay, Ahmed. So that's good. So to get the last one, we just say fruits. We say fruits, and then we give it a square bracket, and then we call again the fruits. So we say fruits dot length -1. So why do we say -1? We say -1 is because we call the length of the item, and the length of item was 5. So now we start from 0 here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the length -1. So because we start from 0, we say -1, and that's how you get the last one. So let's run that, and we should have it somewhere here. Okay, so the last one is grapes right there. So if we clear it and run again, the last one, this is how you run. So in a lot of programs, that's how they find out the last item, because all arrays start with 0, and you just subtract 1 from it. So, and that's how you find that you subtract in the length. So the length was 5. 5 minus 1, what is that? 4, right? 5 minus 1 is 4. And what is the index of grapes? What is the index of grapes?
4.
4, right? So so 4, that's how you get the last one, is by subtracting the length from the from 1, and then that's how you get the last one. So keep that in mind. All right. So let's check a few things here. I would say we already talked about the length. Let's talk about these methods. So these are methods just like the length that are already built in JavaScript. Let's read what they are. So what's push? So what's push? Push is so it says adds item to the end of an array, incrementing its length by 1. So it adds an item to the end of the array. So let's see what that looks like. So let's see here. Let's see here. So that was adds item. Okay, so add an item to an array. So we will use the push. Did I say push? Yeah, push. Use the push method. Okay. So what are we gonna do is we're gonna just gonna grab the fruits. So keep using that array. This one, we don't want to declare it again. We could declare it again so you guys can see clearly it's connected, but we have to comment this one out so it doesn't cause a problem, and comment all this. All right, let's create it again here. So fruits. So now we're gonna use the push method by let's see, by adding item. So let's see. So we say console log, or before that we just add it first. Say fruits dot push, and that's it. So we get the, so we added something new. So if you want to add something new, you have to tell the push what to add. So let's add something like lemon. So push, as it here says here, add item to the end of an array. So we're expecting it to add right here at the end. So let's kind of console log the array now. Okay. All right, let me just get water. Okay, so now we're gonna call the array fruits. Let's clear it, run. So we should have the whole array. Yeah, the whole array. So right there, as you can see, it added lemon at the end. So that's how you add a something at the end of the array. Let's see. We want to add something at the beginning. How do we do that? What do you guys think?
Maybe use pop.
You said pop. All right. So let's see. So push and then push and pop are opposite to each other. So pop removes item from the last part of the element. So if we actually use pop now, let's try fruits dot pop. So pop, when you're trying to create a use a pop, you don't actually add something to it. You just call it the way it is. So pop, and it's a function. It's a built-in function. So we and if you hear method, it's a function. Method and function are the same. So now, if we run it, it should remove the lemon, probably. Actually, it will not do that because we didn't call anything. We didn't call the fruits. So now, like that, it's saved. Okay. So now it removed the lemon. So as you can see, so they're opposite to each other. Push and pop, they're opposite to each other. You add something, you remove something at the end. So let's put here adding, removing an array item is let's just say adding and removing item to an array at the end of an array to end array. Okay, so that's how you do it. So let's actually let's do it at the beginning. So adding, removing from the beginning of an array. So how do we do this? So there's two other methods, and there's a lot of methods, and I'll show you those methods. So there's shift and unshift. So it says here shift and unshift are exactly like the push and pop, except they operate on the first item on the array. So unshift, you give it the item, it will put a new item onto the first. So unshift is you just put something at the beginning. And shift is it removes item from the beginning. So let's say, okay, so let's say fruits dot unshift. Okay, unshift. We have to give it a something to add at the beginning. So let's give it something like blueberry. Now if we call console log the fruits, and we kind of clear here. So check the last one. So the last one, as you can see, it added a blueberry at the beginning of it, of the item, the list. And also the shift is the opposite to it. So fruits.shift will remove something. So you will not add anything to it. If you call this and you try to console log it, it will give you the item it removed. So if you console log, if you give it a variable, let's say, and console log it, it will give you the item that it removed. And sometimes it's kind of useful. We could actually try and say removed item and give it like that. And you already know how the pop and thing works. So this one just remove the item at the beginning. And if we kind of console log that removed item, it should give us blueberry when it runs. Okay, it's blueberry. So this is very handy and useful because sometimes you have a program that you want to know which items are removed, and that's how you run. That's how you get it. Okay. So and of course it will remove. So if we just do the same thing and we call fruits right here, we copy, paste, and clear it and call that, it will you will see blueberry at the beginning and then no blueberry. Okay. So that's easy way to remove something at the beginning, at the end, things like that. Okay. So let's actually go to method. Let's go to all the methods. So let's go to array methods, and there's a lot of them. Let's go here. Not this one. Pop. Okay. Yeah, I want to see all of them. So I think it's somewhere. It's in W3 array methods. Yep, right here. Yeah. So these are all the methods that array uses. So it uses concatenate, tree, fill, filter. There are some of them that we will learn later, and we will you will learn in advanced lesson. There's pop, as you can see here, push, reduce, and slice. So let's learn what the slice is. So it's something different. Okay, so slice. A slice, it's a it basically slices the array. So if you want to get a specific area of the array, so it says here used for removing items in at a specific index. So let's actually write it how it's written. So let's say slice, and then that's how you call it. So this one removes items at a specific place, specific index. So you have to declare the index. So if we say fruits dot splice, splice, not slice, sorry, splice. Splice. So a splice is basically it's like basically cutting a fruit. You're splicing it in half. So a splice.
There's a slice and a slice, right? That's two.
Yeah. Slice is different. Yeah, slice is different. So there is slice is right here. So it's different. That one is different. But if you want to splice in the middle, let's say you wanna get like banana, you wanna cut from here and here. This is how you do it. So you declare two indexes. So let's say 2 and 4. So we want anything in between 2 and 4. And if we go to the description here, let's see. If we go to the description of a splice, it tells us that you have to splice method adds and removes items to or from an array, returns items. Okay, so let's see. So here we said, let's see, splice. Yeah, you give it an index, and you could add the position to add new items and remove one item. So this one is a different way of adding 2 items right here. If you want to remove it, this is how you do it. You give it 2 indexes, and this is 0, 1, 2. So it removes that one. So let's actually try it here, and it removes that. So now, as you can see, we only have that. So you splice like that way. So now it removes, let's see, somewhere in between. Let's run actually. So all these methods, you could use them to run in a different way. So now, let's see, did we run the correct thing? Okay, we didn't console log, yeah. We console log the fruit. Fruits. So save it, clear, run. So the last one, it removed the middle 2. So let's see, it removed the second one, the third one, and the last one, I think. So it removed so we said 2, so it removed the banana, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and removed the grapes. So there's few things to keep in mind, that sometimes it includes the one to the left, or it doesn't include. So there's something to keep in mind about including. We could learn from here. So here, let's see. Position removes negative values to specify position from it. Splice method adds removes item from returns remove. Okay. This method changes the original array. So usually this is not recommended. It changes the original array, which is something that to keep in mind when you're trying to change. So this is not the best way. Slice is also similar way. So it slices, it changes the array. But as you can see here, this one also does not include. So it doesn't include the last one. So it doesn't include like 3 integer 0, 1, 2, 3. It doesn't remove apple. So it removes from 1, which is this one, to this. So these are all the methods that you can use, and read about them, and you will learn a lot about them. So, and you will see a lot of times when you're doing a lot of programming, you will need one of them. Sometimes you will need include, sometimes index of. So just read about them. I'll share the link, and we will take a quick break. Any questions about arrays and how to use them? Any questions about arrays? Let's see if I covered everything. Okay. So we'll take a quick break, about 10 minutes, and then we'll get back and we'll tackle a bigger subject, which is an objects, and you will see how amazing objects are. So let's take a break. 10-minute timer. All right. See you guys in 10 minutes.
فقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه
Anyone before leave, like, if I knew you guys were running up and down, you know? Yeah, so I don't want to be. Hapa African Alliance inaitwa Walter. Ni Mwafrika lakini sio wao hapa. Hiyo wameweka mahali imeandikwa African Alliance again as Walter. Hiyo sasa hiyo ni mambo ya sawa. Wanasaidia mbele. Sasa mimi angalia.
عطوا كفر
ما لقى مرة ما لقى سو لازم أوتا everywhere. For example,
الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين
Okay, let's get back to it. All right, let's create a new band. Call it objects. All right, let's set up this environment. Behavior. Not auto run. Okay. All right, let's get back to it. Let's talk about objects. So what are objects? So objects are the heart of JavaScript language, and not only JavaScript, but a lot of programming languages. If you ever heard about object-oriented programming, this is where it came from. It came from this object, this data type. So object is actually itself is a data type, and arrays are also data types themselves, but they're called they're not primitive data types. They're advanced data types. So objects are another way of storing information like arrays, but they are very similar to arrays, but different also. Okay, so objects allow us to store lots of different data about a single thing. So when we were learning arrays, we learned that you could store information about different things, like different types of fruits, things like that. But objects target only one thing. So each object will target one thing, and it will keep track of information about that one thing. So we will learn what that is. Understand objects will lead you to a greater understanding of JavaScript language as a whole. So if you keep in mind that everything in JavaScript is an object, it will help you understand a lot of things. So functions are objects. Other than the primitive data types, such as like variable and things like that, those are not objects. But the more complex things like functions, methods, things like that, classes, all those are objects. So that's why we call JavaScript, it's also a object-oriented programming language. All right. So we learned arrays, and arrays are a little bit different than objects. So let's go deep into it and kind of like describe what objects are and what they stand for. So objects. Another thing about objects is that it allows you. So let's write notes here so that you could keep these notes for later to group together. Properties and values. Another thing is in objects, order doesn't matter. Remember how in arrays we have to keep everything in order and everything has an index. Objects don't have index, so there's no order. And as I said, everything in JavaScript is an object, except the primitive data types. All right. So let's learn about the anatomy of object. How does an object look like? So how does an object look like? So the first thing you need to do is you will just declare it as a variable. So let's say something like student. And we declare it as a normal variable. But the difference is that you will have, instead of having as an array the square brackets, we will have curly brackets. So if you ever see curly brackets in anywhere, it's an object. Okay. So curly brackets, you will start with curly brackets. So objects have something called key bear and value bear. Key value bear pairs. Okay. So key value pairs is that instead of just like in arrays, we were declaring something like fruit or whatever, and then you have another one or whatever, vegetables. We don't do that in objects. In objects, you have something called key, which is the name. Let's say name, and you have a you have that columns, and then you declare this. So what is this? So you give it a value. So we say, let's say Ahmed. So now basically we declare a student, and we're gonna describe who this student is, let's say. And also another thing is you put here a comma instead of a semicolon. So you put a comma there, you put a colon here, and you don't put a quotes around the keys. So these are keys, these are values. So instead of having a, let's say in arrays we have index, and you target by the index, in objects you target by the keys. So keep that in mind. So let's give this person more information. Let's say location, where he lives is Somalia. Let's give an age. So when it comes to number, you just type the number the way it is, the normal way. And then we give it school. Let's say something like, keep it simple, UFM. I know he lives in Somalia, but UFM, University of Mogadishu. Let's just put it that way. And let's give him a favorite subject that he likes. So favorite subject, we will give computer science, of course, computer science. So this is the anatomy of an object. This is how object looks like. You have curly brackets, you have keys, you have values, and you only target one thing. So now when we say object oriented in programming, we mean that everything is an object in object oriented programming. So a student is an object. So a student is an object, and these are the properties of that student. A house is an object, and then house like has a color, has a how big the house is, things like that. A car, you could call it here a car. A car has a properties, color, make, model, a year, all that stuff. So object-oriented programming, when you hear object-oriented programming, it means everything is an object. So you give it a properties like this. So this is how in general an object looks like. All right, so let's go and let's actually console log this. So what do we get? Console log student. So let's just console log like that and run it. Hopefully it's saved. And we'll get just the object itself. So it actually says object, and then it gives us the information. As you can see here, the order is all messed up. So the name is in the like lower part instead of the top. So that's why, because there's no index that keeps track of things. So the order doesn't matter. All right. So that's object. Object also has. So we learned the key pair values. Object also and we learned how to access it by. Actually, we didn't learn how to access it. So let's learn how to access an object. Let's close these. How do you access an object? All right. So there's two ways to access an object. Who can tell me those two ways, what they are?
Is that by name or by dot?
Okay. So the first one is dot notation. Dot notation. So the dot notation is simply you call you get the name of the object, and then you give it a dot, and then you get one of the keys. So you could call name, and we could console log this like normal, like that, console log. So now we're basically saying get the name of the student. So we use the dot. So let's clear this. Let's console log. Let's comment this out. Run. We should get the name of this student, Ahmed. All right. So that's how you call with the dot. There's also a bracket. There's also another way to call bracket. It's called bracket notation. Notation. The bracket notation is, instead of calling with a dot, you call with a bracket. So you say console log dot, not dot. You say student, and then you give it a. So let me see here. I wrote down some notes. So if you're working with strings, so let's actually call it first. Let's call one of them. So let's say, so you give it the name of one of the keys. So just like that, you give it like a string. So we say location, and then we console logged it. So let's comment this one out. Clear, run. So we should get the location of that student. Actually, we spelled it wrong here. Student. Okay, so this is the bracket notation, and it should give us Somali right there, like right there, Somali. This is bracket notation. A lot of times, most people use the dot notation. It's the one that I have seen the most. So the dot notation is the easiest one. This one, the reason why the bracket notation is a little bit difficult is, let's say we have here two words like that. Sometimes, actually, most of the time you will not have that, but it gives you issues when it comes to calling like methods and things like that. But in general, it works normally. It's just that the dot is more elegant, I guess. So that's why most people use it. So the dot notation, the bracket notation. So another thing we will add is in this object, we want to give this student a profile. So we want to give him a message that says, my name is so and so, I live in so and so, my age is this, or I go to this school, something like that. So to do that, we use something called a method. So let's go here and check out what methods are. So properties and methods. So that's what objects have. So properties and methods. Properties are these are properties. Normal, just location, and then you give it a something. But properties are different. Methods are different. Methods are actual functions. So methods are functions that we could declare. Actually, let's just declare it here so I can show you. So you declare actual function within the object. So this is how you declare it. So let's say we want to create a profile for this student. So profile, the key, the normal key, and then you say function. We declare a normal function here, and the function doesn't have a name, so it's anonymous function. And then we just open it and we return whatever message we want. So in here, we want to return something that says, hi, my name is Ahmed. I live in Somalia, and I go to a UFM, or my favorite subject is computer science. So we will use something called backticks. Backticks are not quotes. So as you can see here, I wrote down a backtick. Backtick is right above your tab on your keyboard, right underneath escape if you're using, I think, Windows. So it's not, you see where it says tilde, you have the tilde, or number one, right to the left of number one, you have that. So
Yeah, number one.
yeah. So it's a backtick. It's called backtick. It's not quote. Quote is like that or like this. That's a quote. But this one is a backtick. So this one is a special thing in JavaScript. And you could do special stuff in here. If we didn't use this, we have to do this. So now we're just going to use normal quote. And we're going to say, hi. Hi, my name is. So if we do that, we have to kind of like go outside of the quote and say plus, and then call one of the properties. But instead of adding the plus and having all these quotes, you don't even have to do that. So you give the backticks and you say, hi, my name is. So let's just put comma here. My name is. So instead of going outside of the backtick, you give it a $sign. So this $sign, and also you give a curly bracket. So this $sign and curly brackets are called template literal. So let me write somewhere right here. So actually, we could just actually search template literals in JavaScript. So they're called template literals in JavaScript. They are very useful. It's right here. This is how you use it. It's basically when you declare that $sign and that curly bracket, you could put a JavaScript expression in there. You could put something that can run, like a calling a function or something like that, or calling a method or property. So within these backticks, so these backticks are important. If you put quotation around it, it will not work. So later on when you're doing the assignment, or if you try this, make sure that you have the backtick, and you have the $sign and the curly bracket. So you don't have to put plus or anything around it. So that's called template literal. I'll share that with you guys. Let me share it right there. Okay, so let's get back to it. So template literal. So we use template literal, and then we call one of these. So my name is, so now we call the name, and we say this dot name. So this is this part, this thing where we say this, the word this is actually part of JavaScript, and I don't know if we covered. I don't think we covered it. So that this is a keyword that we use to kind of like shorten the name of the object. So this is basically saying student. So instead of this, you could say student. So you call in the name of the object by itself. So we say this. So you have to have it within an object, or you have to call a object, and then that's when you call in this function, you could use this. So it's basically a reference to the object. So keep that in mind when you see this. All right. My name's Abdi. Okay. And then my name's Ahmed, and I live in, and then we just use the template literal, and then we say location, this location, sorry, this dot location. And let me just expand this so it looks nicer. Okay. And then I live in this place, and my favorite subject is, let's open the template literal. So if you're confused about this template literal stuff, it will take a little time, but read about it, go to that link I gave you, and it will make more sense if you practice it. So subject will say faith subject, okay? And we'll keep it at that. All right. I think we lost the backticks somewhere. I was right here. We lost it here. So backtick. Just leave it 1. Okay. So now it should run, and it should give us, if we run this method, it should give us that. So how do we run that method? So we basically go here and we call it. So we say console log, and we say student dot profile. If we do that, if we just leave it at that, you'll see what happens. Okay, let's clear it. You'll see what happens. So if this ever happens to you, this is what are you doing. So it will just show you the function itself. So it will show you, okay, this is the function you're trying to call, or you're trying to invoke. So we have to actually invoke it. Remember how we learned in the function part that you have to invoke a function? So this is how you invoke it. So let's clear it and run it again. It should give us that nice message. All right. Hi, my name is Ahmed. I live in Somalia, and my favorite subject is computer science. So that's very powerful. That's really nice. And you could run as many functions as you want in here. So these functions are called methods. So keep that in mind. So they're called methods. They're not just functions. They're functions that are part of an object. So if a function is by itself, then it's a function. But if it's part of an object, then it's a method. Okay, so that's how you run a method within an object. Within an object. All right, let's see. So we did that. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, go ahead.
That part, the last part is profile. It's you're doing concatenating basically, right?
In here, the when I I did, yeah. So
that's a concatenate, right?
So the concatenating part, that's what I said. The reason why we don't use the quotes here is because we're going to do a concatenating, but we're not doing concatenating now. We're using template literal, which is this. So you don't even have to do concatenating. You could just write within your message, use the backticks. Right within your message, you could just declare the expression like that. But if you want to do it in the concatenating way, it's different. You just have to use quotes and then use plus wherever you have expression. So use a plus.
That's the old way. That's the old way, I guess.
Yeah, it's really like a lot of people use it still, but this one is maybe a little bit easier if you practice it more. All right. So any questions about that? How to declare that, and how to write methods and objects? Any questions you guys have? All right. Okay, let's move on. Let's add a little more complexity to it. Let's actually copy this whole object, comment it out, go down, and paste it here. Let's add something else here. Let's add something like what did we add? So let's add something like sister. So we want to know more about this person. So we add in a sister. But this time we add in another object. So we put in an object within an object, which is a nice, it's a meta. So we say name. So this is his sister. So we say name, we call it something like Hamdi. We say, we give her a similar properties. We say something like school. And we say something like USM, something like that, random name. And we give our age and we say 20. All right. So now we have the sister. Actually, here, let's put that. Now we have the sister. How do we call the sister? If we want to get the name of the sister, that's kind of the tricky part. How do we get the name of the sister? How do we log it? We say console log. Okay, what do we call?
Student.
Student. Okay, good. Then what else do we include there?
Dot sister.
That sister.
I don't know. I lost that part.
Okay, that's all right. So you're close. You're very close. So now we call the sister that sister. Now let's actually run this. So you're actually very, very close. So let's run this. It will give us the object of the sister. So it will give us information of the sister. Now, if we want to call her name, we just say dot name. So we kind of like have a train going on of dots. So it's a student dot sister dot name, and that should give us the name. So that's how you call a nested objects, and you can nest multiple objects. As many objects as you want. You can nest another one right here, and say something like hobbies or something like that. Hobbies, and then say, yeah. So it can go deep. So make sure that when you're trying, a lot of times objects come in, and it's also objects and JSON are pretty similar. They come in like when you get information from database or something like that, you get something that looks like an object, and the data is kind of like nested. So you kind of have to like access something within something. So that would be something that we will learn in the future. All right. So let's comment this out so it doesn't run again. Let's do something completely different. Yeah, go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead, bro.
Oh, I was gonna say, can you put array in the object? You can put array, right? Array.
You could put an array. Yeah, you could put an array here. So you could say something like, let's say, we could say favorite teams. Let's say he has favorite teams. We could say something like Liverpool here, and add another one, something like maybe he likes Manchester. I don't know if you're gonna like both at the same time. Man United or something like that. I don't know a lot about sports. So yeah, you could do that, and you could actually call it and say just the same way you call the other stuff, and you could call the favorite teams, and it will log that array. So yeah, you could put as many things as you want, and you could actually call one of them and say something like 1, which is we use an index, so we should get a Man United. So in console log, you should have that. Yeah, so you could put true or false right here. You could put any method, any data type in object. So it's really versatile. So now we're gonna flip things. Actually, that was a good question that you actually asked. We're gonna flip things and put objects within an array. So this is going to be something different. Any questions about what we just did here before we move on to a little more advanced stuff?
You can use the return as well, right? And then call it.
So in here the function, this function, or
Yeah,
the
for
whole
the
object.
sisters, and do the same as the return function.
Yes. So if you want to give the sister a function, you could do that too. So if you want to give her something like this, you could do that, and just you could put it right in her own object. So you could say something like profile, and then give her a function here too. So you could do that too, and you could call it the same way. You could just chain things like student dot sister dot and then profile, and then call the profile as a function, invoke it, and then it will just give that. So you can nest so many things in here. All right. All right. So that was good. Any other questions about objects? All right. Okay. And also, if you guys have questions and you want to ask them anonymously, I can give you a link. So let me actually get that Slido. I mean, there's a reason why we're paying for a Slido. We're actually paying for it. It's a way to interact with the students, and we're using it for larger groups. So this is a website where we where you could ask an anonymous question, and I will not know who asked that question. So yeah, it's just a login. In case you kind of like, some people are a little bit shyer than other people, so it's fine. Maybe you want to clear something up, and you don't want to be the person who says it. So I'll share the link. This is the link right here. So this is a good place to ask a question, and I will not know who it is. So feel free, and I will look at it in a little bit. Okay. All right, let's move on. What time do we have? We have 30 minutes. Okay, good. So we're very close to finishing the object, but we have a big chunk that's left. So now we're going to create something called a objects, and we're going to call objects of we're going to call it array of objects. So we just learned arrays. So let's use that with objects. So we're going to connect, we're going to put them together. So we're going to call it array objects, array of objects. I think it's called array objects. Okay. So we're going to declare something. We're going to call it countries. Now we're going to declare a actual array. Okay. So within this array, we're going to declare a objects. So we're going to give, I'm going to do the first one manually, and then we're going to copy the rest. So the first one would be, it's better if we do it in one line. You will see how it looks better in one line. So let's do it in one line here. So we'll say city. The first key is a city, because we're doing countries, remember? So we're doing countries. So now we're gonna do the actual countries. So city, we'll say Mogadishu. We're gonna say country. We're gonna say Somalia. And we're gonna say population. Population. And I copied this from somewhere, so it might not be accurate or whatever. So 15, 8, 9, 3, 2, 2, 2. And we're gonna copy the rest because this page, I think this says 15 million. So now what we did was we declared a constant. This constant. We declared a array, and we put a object within the array. So now let me copy the rest, the other countries. Put them right here. So as you can see, we have many countries. So we have Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, and Ghana. So this is African countries, and this is their population. I copied from recent data. The cities, capital cities. So we're gonna see what we can do with this data. So this is how you declare if you want to put a objects within an array. Okay, the first thing we will do is let's actually just console log it. So we say console log countries. Okay, so we don't have any other console log, so we should have it render pretty nice like that. So it says object, and then each one it says object here, and it gives us a nice nice way of rendering it. All right, so that's how you kind of render all of it. Okay, so now let's see. So here's, I'm just gonna ask you questions about it, so you guys have an active thinking. If you think something, you could use a Slido here, and I'll see the questions here, somewhere here actually. I don't even remember. It's been a while, so you could put your answers here if you want, and I will use the presentation in the new tab, and it will show here whatever you guys answer. Where is it? Yeah, okay. Present. Okay, so yeah, you could scan this on your phone, and it will show the information here. So whenever you guys add something to it, so the question was, how do we actually get the first country? Let's say, how do we console log that? Console log first thing. What will we do? We're gonna call countries, right? And then what should we do to call the first? So this is an array. Keep that in mind. Array. How do you call the first thing in an array? Remember what we did?
Dot notation or brackets?
Square bracket.
Square bracket. Okay. Square bracket. What do we use in an array to call something?
Index.
The index. Okay. So what is the first index? 1?
Zero.
1? Okay.
0.
It's 0. So keep that in mind. We did talk about, so if you have an array, always the first one is a 0. The first one is 0. So now let's actually just render that. Okay, render it. So it should give us a one line, one object. So Somali. Okay, that's good. How do we call? Okay, so that's good. But how do we call, let's say, just the name of the country? What should we do? So we already have that country in an object. How do you call something in an object?
Dot. I think dot. I don't know. Not sure.
Dot is good. Yeah, you're in the right track. So dot, and then we would use the key, right?
Key pairs.
Yeah, so we use the key. So dot. So now we're calling the first country, and we're calling the country key. So it should give us Somalia. So that's how you go through an array, an object within an array. So first you call the array itself, and you call the one that you want. And also you could use for loop, and let's see if we have that somewhere. Yeah, we'll see how we can use for loop to kind of like go through it instead of like this is a hard coding. So instead of hard coding it, we can use for loop to loop through it, and we'll see that. So that's how we call. Let's see. How do we add a new thing? So remember, this is an actual array. So how did we add something in an array? If we go back to the references, go back to an array, push. Okay, good. So you're on the right track. So we're gonna say we're gonna call the countries, which is an actual array, and then we say push. And now in the push, we need to add a new array. So how do we declare a new array in here? So just like this right here. So we give it a curly bracket to start an array, and then we just add it the way it is, like right here. So we say city, and we call it something like let's add like Khartoum, and then right here we add a country, Let's add Sudan and population. And you could just add some of it and just leave it the others. And then it will just leave it empty, the let's say population. Let's add it. Population, let's say something like 4,445,0,498. All right, so that is the population of Sudan. Now we have to actually invoke, we have to not invoke, but we have to call that, we have to do a console log of the whole thing. So let's go back here, console log, and we should have Sudan added at the end of it. So countries. All right, declare, clear, run. All right, so we have Mogadishu, and then right here, Sudan. So that's how you add. You use a push because it's a normal array. And you can use all the other methods of the array, the slice, splice, all that stuff we did. I showed you to play around with this. All right, so that's how you add something to it. All right, so let's see. Now the last thing I want to do about the objects is that I want to know how many. Let's see. How many countries have over 20 million people? So we want to know that. So how do we go through that? So we want to know how many countries are over 20 million. Of course, Somalia it's not going to be part of it and all that. So okay, so where do we start from that? What do you think?
You have to, I think, loop through
Okay.
and find the population.
Loop through, that's a good one. Okay, let me just give the steps here. What's actually steps? Steps here. So let's say loop through. Okay, loop through. We want to find countries over 20 million. Of course, we're using the population. Okay. So any other steps you guys can think of after you loop through? What are we gonna do? Okay, so that's fine because you guys didn't practice a lot of like the if statements and things like that, so it's okay. I understand. So let me just show you, and I think this is one of the it's something similar to it is one of the problems. So take a note maybe or take a screenshot. So first thing we will do is we will declare a variable, not a variable. Declare a new array. So we want to take the countries that are over 20 million and put them in a new array. So declare a new array. On step 2, we will loop through countries array. And then the last step is we will check if any of the countries' population is higher than 20 million. So so those are the steps. And then actually the last step would be we will push the countries that are over 20 million to the array, to the new array we created. So we created a new array, and then we loop through the countries that we have, these countries. And then after that, we will check if any of the country has more than 20 million. And then if it does, then we will push it to this new array. Okay, so let's do that. And this is kind of like maybe a interview question. So in the future, if you have an interview, they may ask you questions similar to this. And this is how you usually solve it. You have to kind of like give them the steps that you're going to do before you actually do the problem. So first we will declare a new variable. We'll call it something like big countries, and we'll keep it empty. So this is an empty empty array, not a variable. Now we'll loop through. We'll say for, we'll say let I equal to 0. So now this is the normal for loop that we learned. And then we'll say as long as I is less than countries dot length. So we're checking as long as, keep going, keep looping, as long as the length of countries is less than I, which is, which is something that's incrementing. And then we'll create the increment here. And then we say I increment, keep going. All right. So now we did the for loop, and we could check, and it will give us all the countries normally when we in the for loop. But that's not what we're here for. So we want to check. So to check, we use if statements. So if, we will say countries. So how do we okay. So I think we learned in the for loop, but to get any of the items, so to get any of these, actually let's bring them down so that it's easier for us to see instead of keep scrolling up. Instead of check, so if you wanna get any of them, each one of them is an I. So this I represents this country, and then the next round it represents this one. So we're gonna call countries, and then we're gonna give a square bracket, which is normally how you call an array, and then you will say I. So I is 0, 1, 2, 3. So all the indexes of this. And then we will say we want to check each country, but we want to check the population of each country. So we say population. So if each country's population is greater than 20 million, which is 2,000,2,000. That's how I usually know a million. I can't see all the zeros. So 20 million, if any of the country's population is more than 20 million, then we will say do this, okay? So we will grab this array. We'll say big countries. We say dot push. Remember how we used push? So this is another time we're using push. So what do we push? So what do we push to this array? Just not in a programming way, like in logical way. What do we push? Since we
Population.
Okay, go ahead.
Half of the population.
Go ahead.
Half of the population.
Oh, half of population. Okay, I thought you said half a question. Sorry, half of the
No,
population.
half.
Okay, so half of the population. So what are we looking for in this problem? We're looking for countries over 20 million people. Countries with 20 over million people. Okay, so and here we're checking countries that are over 20 million people. So, and we're taking that and we're saying if they are over 20 million people, push them to this array, right? So basically this condition is checking if any of this country has more than 20 million people, and and then we're taking any of these countries and then we're putting them in this array. So we push them to that array. So now let's just put the countries themselves. So we will say countries, and then we'll give I, and I is each country. So each time it checks, it says, does this country has more than 20 million? Okay, let's check it. Let's check the population. Boom, it says, it looks at it and says 114 million. Okay, it's more than that. So now put it in this array. So that's what it's basically doing. And let's just call the country name. So let's just say country here. Country. So now that's it. That's it for the for loop. And we'll go down here. We'll just console log. We'll console log big country because that we look for the countries that are more than 20 million. So let's run it. So it will give us the countries that are more than 20 million. Okay, so all these countries have more than 20 million people in them. So now it left. What countries did it leave? It left Somalia, right?
Just Somalia.
Just Somalia. Okay. And this one is way more. It's 206 million, 53 million. Yeah, just Somalia. So yeah, so that's basically, that's how you do it. You could actually change this name to something like over 100 million, and it checks that for you. Any countries over 100 million. Ethiopia, of course, is part of it. Ethiopia and Nigeria are the only countries over 100 million. So that's really interesting. Like, you could take a whole data and you could grab something from it by just using for loop and an if statement. So this is gonna come in handy. So keep that in mind. You could take a screenshot of it or something like that, and inshallah use it in the future. So any questions about this problem or the objects we learned and arrays? Any questions you guys have? I know it's a lot of information, so I'm not expecting you guys to know everything all of a sudden, but just any question you have, let me know. Let's see.
One question. So I see you're using the push. Can you use unshift also in that same case?
So let's see what unshift is. So unshift is to add something at the beginning, right? Let's see. Where's it for? Okay, unshift. And all this is, I have to look at references. So it's not like I memorize all these methods. I just look at the reference every time. I don't remember. So it says unshift. Yeah, unshift will put a new item at the beginning. Yeah. So you could use unshift, but the thing about the unshift is that this this array is already empty. So if you use unshift, it will just put it in the array. So basically, there's no use for it. So you could use unshift, but it's basically most people use push because it's like basically you push into it. So you're taking this, pushing there. But I think you could use unshift. I've never seen somebody using unshift. We could try unshift. We could try it. Let's see.
Yeah, I think you will do the same.
Yeah, so it does exactly the same thing. It just puts at the beginning. So let's say we put something here. We put something like test, and we run it again. It's gonna put before the test. So it's gonna add those countries before the test. So as you can see here, before the test. And if we use push, I think push that puts at the end. And if we run that, it puts at the end of it. Test will be at the front. So just like that. So that's only the difference. But the reason we use push is because it makes sense to push something into there. That's the only thing. Any other question? Let's see.
I didn't know you can use I in push.
Yeah, so when you're in the for loop, usually, and when we go into like a little more advanced, we will not be using like pure for loop. We will graduate from pure for loop, but yeah, I comes always in handy, and also I is just a kind of like a magacuyal, as they say in Somali. It's like a placeholder. So you can name it whatever you want.
Yeah, I know you can use it in the for loop, but I didn't know you can use it in the push method.
Yes. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how like you could put something here, anything. So if we console log this, it will just give us the countries. So now it's basically, you could actually do this too. You could give a variable. You could say let chosen countries or something like that, and equal to put it here. So this is, I think, how you've seen it before. And then it's getting a little crowded, but instead of using that, you could just choose this variable. So like that. And this variable will be pushed here. So it will be the same, hopefully. Yeah. So that's mostly how you will see it. First, you'll declare a variable, and then you'll push that variable into the new array. Any questions you guys have? Okay. We'll close it down. Let's go to the assignment. And if you're confused about something, you can read up here. and I will share also the links to these assignments, these things I talked about. So let me actually share before. Let me save them. Let me share that as a note. So I'll say objects. The other ones, where is it? Let me share these two. So think of any questions you have while I'm doing this. There's the notes to the functions. And the last thing would be arrays. Let's go here. Arrays. So this will be your kind of your notes on references if you haven't taken any notes. Okay, so the assignment for today, right here, you go here, and you fork it. Keep that in mind. The Git flow, fork it, clone it, add me as a collaborator. Okay, so when you do that, these are your assignments. So you have function. You could start with any of these. So if you start with something like functions, it gives you a couple of tasks to do. So I think when you were doing the Sprint project, you guys have seen this similar style. So the first problem is this. The second problem is it calculates an age of a cat. So according to a human age. So, and it gives you the function already. So you don't have to write the function yourself. Let me zoom in. Gives you the function. This one, you convert an arrow you will convert these functions to an arrow function. So you have this function, convert it to an arrow function, this function and this function, convert them. So you just kind of like, you will not do anything. You will just change them to an arrow function. The last big one is you guys gonna build a rock, paper, scissors game. I know this one is a bit difficult, but if I don't push you guys, you're never gonna learn. So you're gonna use the knowledge you learned, which is the for loop. You will use the if statement, and you will use the functions that we just learned, even variables. Arrays and objects, maybe mostly arrays to create this game. So it says create a global variable that randomly generates a computer choice. Use math.random. So math.random randomizes a number, so it gives you a random number. And always just Google something like right here. W3 Schools talks about it. So now if you actually run it, every time you run it, it gives you a random number, randomly, computer generated number. Let's go back here. Hint, it says while you complete this only with only conditions based on strings, it may help to equate choices to a number when using math.random, blah blah blah. All the steps are there. These are the rules of rock paper scissors. Most of you know. And this is more hint, and this is the function you will use. So, and this is the stretch. So if you're really good at JavaScript and you're done with this, do the stretch. So, and when you're done with all of them, you do the arrays, you do the objects. You could also use the index to run it. So I already put it here for you. So if you want to console log something, use that, and then push your work. Read the description here, what you need to do, and you're good to go. So this is due tomorrow. Don't delay. It might catch you up, and other lessons might be harder. So do it tomorrow. You have all tomorrow to do it. We don't have a lecture tomorrow, so yeah. Any other questions before we close out? All right.
So from now to tomorrow, 10 p.m.
Tomorrow 9:30 p.m. Minnesota time.
Okay.
Yeah, 9:30 we're gonna have a stand up. So make sure you come to the stand up. where we just talk about what you guys did, how was it, all that stuff. So that's your task for tomorrow. All right, guys. I will see you tomorrow, and have a good night. Take a break, let this kind of like simmer, and don't think about it that much. Take a good sleep, have a nice drink, all that, so that all this knowledge kind of like sinks in your brain. So take care, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.